many other...
Hello and welcome to this WION live broadcast from Washington, D.C. I'm Jagruti Dave, and in this bulletin we'll get you updates on the top stories developing around the world. But first, let's take a look at the headlines. The death toll from the devastating floods in Europe soars to at least 126, most of them in Western Germany, where emergency responders are still searching frantically for missing people. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa says that the deadly violence and looting that shook the country over the past week was instigated and planned. The death toll in South Africa has risen to 117. Airstrikes in Afghanistan's Badakhshan province killed 20 Taliban terrorists, including a shadow deputy governor. Some of the group's weapons, ammunition and vehicles were destroyed in the attack. Afghan President Ashraf Ghani accuses Pakistan of backing the Taliban, a charge refuted by Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan, as both leaders attend the South Asia 2021 conference in Tashkent. The iconic Eiffel Tower reopens to visitors after 9 months of shutdown caused by the COVID pandemic. This was its longest closure since World War II. The daily capacity will be halved to admit only 13,000 people per day. Tennis world number one Novak Djokovic bucks the trend of big-name pullouts and confirms his participation at the Tokyo Olympics. The Serbian is seeking a first-ever Olympic gold, having won all 3 Grand Slams this year. A serious and highly unusual leak from within the Kremlin has sent tremors across political corridors from Moscow to Washington, D.C. The Guardian claims that it has accessed leaked Kremlin documents that point to Russian interference in the 2016 United States presidential election. According to the report, the leaked documents show that Vladimir Putin personally authorized a secret spy agency operation to support Donald Trump in the 2016 presidential election. The operation was said to be approved in a closed session of Russia's National Security Council on January the 22nd, 2016. Russian President Vladimir Putin, his spy chiefs and senior ministers were all present. The leaked documents allegedly say that Putin and the Russian National Security Council agreed that having Donald Trump at the White House would help Moscow secure the Kremlin's strategic objectives. These include social turmoil in the United States and a weakening of the American president's negotiating position. Documents prepared by Putin's expert department supposedly recommended that the Kremlin should put all its weight behind Donald Trump. The report, named 3204, is allegedly a classified secret. It says Trump is the most promising candidate from the Kremlin's point of view. The document also contains a brief psychological assessment of Donald Trump. It describes the former president as an impulsive, mentally unstable and unbalanced individual who suffers from an inferiority complex. There's also apparent confirmation that the Kremlin possesses compromising material on Donald Trump from his earlier non-official visits to the Russian territory. As per the document, each spy agency was given a role and the measures were effective after Vladimir Putin's signature. The Guardian claims that it has shown the documents to independent experts who say that they appear to be genuine. The Kremlin, however, has outrightly dismissed the document. Responding to The Guardian, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov called the idea of Russian leaders meeting to support Donald Trump a great pulp fiction. However, a meeting did in fact take place on January the 22nd, 2016, 2016 at the Kremlin. A picture released by Russian Presidential Press Service was released showing Putin at the head of the table. Russia's then Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev was also present at the meeting, as well as Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and other top leaders. The press release said that the discussion revolved around the economy and Moldova. While Russia has repeatedly denied accusations of interference in American elections, the papers, if authentic, counter the claims made by Russia. Now, according to reports, the United States is preparing to impose sanctions on Chinese officials over Beijing's crackdown in Hong Kong. Sources say the financial sanctions would target 7 officials from China's Hong Kong liaison office. Responding to reports, China has hit back at the United States and said it must stop interfering in matters related to Hong Kong.
Hong Kong is China's Hong Kong. Hong Kong affairs are purely China's internal affairs. No foreign country has the right to make irresponsible remarks or interfere in arbitrary ways. The United States should abide by international law and basic norms of international relations and stop interfering in Hong Kong affairs and China's internal affairs in any way. China will respond firmly and forcefully to the measures taken by the United States.
The U.S. is set to slap sanctions on Chinese officials Friday over what President Joe Biden called the deteriorating situation in Hong Kong. That's according to 2 sources familiar with the matter. It's the Biden administration's latest plan to hold China accountable for its crackdown on the former British colony and is certain to anger Beijing. The sources said the financial sanctions would target 7 officials from China's Hong Kong liaison office, which projects Beijing's influence into the Chinese territory. A separate advisory issued by the State Department would highlight U.S. government concerns about the impact of Hong Kong's national security law on international companies. Critics say Beijing implemented that law last year to facilitate a crackdown on pro-democracy activists and press freedom. Both sources said the measures were still subject to change. One said the White House was also reviewing a possible executive order on immigration from Hong Kong, but nothing was certain just yet. The U.S. Treasury Department has declined to comment on the issue, following media reports this week about possible new sanctions. Meanwhile, a visit to China by the State Department's number 2 official, Wendy Sherman, appears to have been canceled. The State Department also warned businesses on Tuesday about the growing risks of supply chain and investment links to China's Xinjiang region, citing evidence of forced labor and human rights abuses.
The island nation of Haiti is still reeling from the political chaos sparked by the assassination of its president Jovenel Moïse. Haiti's acting Prime Minister Claude Joseph requested troops from both the United States and the United Nations to help secure its airport and other infrastructure. US President Joe Biden, however, appeared to rule out the possibility of sending US troops to Haiti to stabilize the Caribbean nation.
U.S. President Joe Biden on Thursday seemed to rule out the possibility of any military intervention in Haiti after the assassination of the Caribbean country's president.
We're only sending American Marines to our embassy to make sure that they are secure and nothing is out of whack at all. But the idea of sending American forces into Haiti is not on the agenda at this moment.
President Jovenel Moïse was gunned down in his home on July 7th, an attack that eyewitnesses living nearby described for Reuters.
I was sleeping. It was midnight. I heard a megaphone with a voice speaking in Creole and another language. It felt like a dream. Then I heard some shots. The house started to shake like there was an earthquake.
A group of Colombian ex-military and 2 Haitian Americans have been arrested in connection to the killing, along with a Haitian man that authorities accuse of masterminding the plot. On Thursday, Colombia's President Iván Duque said many of the Colombians had gone to Haiti, apparently in good faith, to work as bodyguards, although others, he said, knew a crime was being planned.
But let's be honest, no matter how much information they had, what is evident is that all of that group participated in the assassination.
The Pentagon has confirmed that some of the Colombian mercenaries had received U.S. military training in the past while they served in their country's armed forces. Police on Thursday said the head of security for the presidential palace has also been arrested. He's now being questioned about why the attackers did not meet more resistance at the president's home. Police also denied media reports that linked Haiti's acting prime minister, Claude Joseph, with the killing.
Moving on to Afghanistan, where a government official has said that an indefinite ceasefire has been negotiated with local Taliban leaders in a western Afghanistan province. This move came after the Taliban secured complete control over all the districts in Badghis province. A provincial governor said that the ceasefire was reached thanks to local tribal leaders who mediated between the Taliban and the local government. The Taliban have agreed to move to the outskirts of Kala-e-Nau, the capital of the province of Badghis. A spokesman for the Taliban, however, has denied that there was any ceasefire agreement and said that they had left the city to avoid civilian casualties. Clashes between the Taliban and Afghanistan forces have intensified as the US and its NATO allies continue to withdraw troops from the country. The Taliban have captured several districts and border crossings in the north and west. Meanwhile, the Independent Administrative Reform and Civil Service Commission has found that essential government services have been halted in districts recently seized by the Taliban. They also found that the Taliban destroyed 260 government buildings and assets in 116 districts. Services like reconstruction of water supply networks, roads, bridges, drilling wells and other development projects have also been shut down. The Taliban has denied these allegations as well. A senior Afghan government official in Kabul said the Afghan security forces were working to push back Taliban fighters and regain control over 190 districts. The deteriorating security situation has raised fears of a new Afghan refugee crisis. An Afghanistan government delegation is headed to Doha to jumpstart a long-stalled peace process with the Taliban. The talks come a day after Nader Naderi, the spokesman for the government's negotiating team, said the Taliban have offered a 3-month ceasefire in return for thousands of prisoners being released. However, he later said that no formal proposal had been made. Peace talks launched in Qatar last year have so far failed to reach any political settlement. A ceasefire pact with the Taliban in one district fell through in May. The 8-member delegation includes senior Afghan peace official Abdullah Abdullah and former President Hamid Karzai. The senior Afghan delegation is expected to talk to the Taliban about a ceasefire as violence rises across Afghanistan. The insurgent group has taken a hard stance on negotiations. The news of the delegation's visit came hours after the Taliban warned of consequences following plans to keep some Turkish troops in Afghanistan to run and guard Kabul airport after foreign forces pull out. It was not immediately clear if the Kabul airport matter would be discussed between the Taliban and the senior Afghan delegation. Meanwhile, Islamabad has announced it will invite a number of Afghan leaders to a peace conference over the weekend. But an aide to Afghan President Ashraf Ghani told local media his government had asked for it to be postponed, with politicians already heading to Qatar. After a week of looting and mayhem, there is an uneasy calm in South Africa. The unrest has claimed 121 lives and inflicted a devastating blow to the economy. In the latest development, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa visited the KwaZulu-Natal province. This is his first on-the-ground visit since the violence broke out. Remember, KwaZulu-Natal has been the epicenter of the unrest. Mr. Ramaphosa said the deadly violence was planned and instigated.
And it's quite clear that all these incidents of unrest and looting were instigated. There are instigators, there were people who planned it, they coordinated it. This is not what we want to see in our country. And obviously we are going to have to re-examine everything that we do in defense of our people, in defense of the assets of the country. But right now, I'd like to say that we are rolling out our security forces. 25,000 soldiers are now being rolled out, and in a short space of time, they will have flooded the entire province and other provinces such as Gauteng as well. So this is most unfortunate where we are.
The South African president tried to reassure citizens by saying that the authorities are doing everything to put an end to the unrest. The announcement comes after authorities identified 12 suspects. One suspected instigator has been arrested and 11 are under surveillance. In all, 2,203 people have been arrested during the unrest for various offences, including theft. The southeastern province of KwaZulu-Natal continues to remain at the centre of the violence. Top ministers and army generals have arrived in KwaZulu-Natal. They'll assess the situation and oversee the deployment of security forces. Warehouses and stores in Johannesburg and KwaZulu-Natal have been looted. This has wreaked havoc on crucial supply chains for food, fuel and medicine. The violence has served a huge blow to the South African economy, which was already reeling under the after effects of the pandemic. Experts have said that it will take years to rebuild the damaged infrastructure. This would severely affect employment levels and education opportunities in the region. The unrest started a day after former President Jacob Zuma began a 15-month jail term, and it soon transformed into mass looting and riots. Mr. Zuma was sentenced to jail for refusing to testify in a corruption probe under his tenure. Millions of Nigerians who were once on a solid financial footing can no longer reliably feed themselves or their families since COVID-19 hit Africa's most populous nation and its biggest economy. Prices for staples have risen by 30% or more. Inflation is near an all-time high and food prices account for almost 70% of the rise. According to the World Bank, roughly 18% of households in Nigeria have at least one adult who does not eat for an entire day at a time, compared to 6% before the pandemic.
Desmond Okori is doing anything he can to make ends meet. In Nigeria's financial capital, Lagos, he was once employed at a furniture store for over a decade. But at the start of the global health crisis, he was laid off. Now the father of 5 picks up used cans for recycling and also works as a bricklayer to feed his family.
In a day, we can gather up to 30 kilos. So when we gather it, then we give it to them. They will now measure it and give us the money.
Rising prices of food staples in Africa's largest economy has only added to the strain. Prices of eggs, onions, and palm oil have risen by at least 30%. While Okori says his weekly income is about $20, his family's weekly expenditure can sometimes be almost double that.
The way we are living is very, very hard. But honestly, it's a kind of hand-to-mouth.
Millions of Nigerians like Okori, once on solid financial footing, now rely on donated food to feed their families. Some go an entire day without eating. And the crisis in Africa's most populous nation is far from over. Inflation in the country is nearing an all-time high, largely due to soaring food prices. Rising unemployment and political insecurity in farming regions in the north only add to that. It's threatening to plunge more of the nation's formerly middle class into financial despair. The World Bank estimates that the drastic price changes in 2020 pushed 7 million more Nigerians into poverty, an increase of nearly 10%.
Now, Maradona is one of the greatest footballers of all time. But for his fans, Maradona wasn't just a football player. He was a god who had stepped onto the football pitch. And now, a church built in Maradona's honour has opened its doors in Mexico. Our next report has the details.
Maradona's 11 seconds of magic, which produced the goal of the century in the 1986 World Cup, is a moment that no football fan would ever forget. But for his die-hard fans, he wasn't just a footballing legend, but a divine being who touched the lives of millions with his dribbling skills and sublime ball control. So don't be surprised when we tell you that his fans are not just fans, but believers. And the faith they follow is known as the Maradonian religion. Founded in 1988, the Maradonian religion has just opened a new church in the central Mexican city of Puebla. People generally walk into the Maradonian church out of curiosity, but are hooked by the love of football.
People are happy because they have a place where they can voice their opinion. The main thing is that it is a totally Maradonian church where we can talk about football. It's a parody of the Maradonian church and we talk about football. And it is not something like going to another church, sitting down and listening. Here you are part of everything. People have accepted this and they are very happy. I have seen people cry, people throw themselves at his picture, pray. I feel much better that I'm not the only crazy one.
The Maradonian religion has more than 500,000 adherents across several continents. To be a believer, one must profess one's undying love for football, adopt Diego as the middle name, and obey the 10 commandments of the faith. The religion is not about blind belief. Maradona's adherents know that the god of the football pitch was a deeply troubled man in his personal life.
We all know that he had a lot of problems with his life, but that was his personal situation. His situation as a human, a lot of people can find themselves in the same one. But inside the football field, it was another thing. He was a man who made many more people love football and enjoy it. This has always stayed with me, the part I lived with football, looking at the way he moved, how he played, how he made people follow him, and how he enjoyed football.
Being a part of Maradona's church is unlike any other organized religion. There are no sermons, and adherents are not forced to just sit and listen. Afterlife has no place here. The only thing allowed are impassioned debates on Maradona and the beautiful game. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Now, a climate crisis is looming. Citizens are feeling the heat, and so are animals across the globe. Before we leave you, here's a look at how these ring-tailed lemurs were fed ice lollies to beat off the summer heat in London Zoo. Thanks for watching.
This is right, Arab.